Welcome to my YouTube channel, Sci-fi pules. Please subscribe, like, and share to support my channel. Queen Margaret ruled over a wide human kingdom that reached many worlds across the stars. People respected her for her fairness and calm strength, but her heart belonged to her children. Her youngest daughter, Lily, was the joy of her life. Lily was bright, gentle, and full of life. Whenever she walked through the halls of the palace, she carried laughter with her. Servants and guards felt lighter when she was near. She was the light that made the heavy duties of the queen feel easier. One day, the royal family prepared for a journey to a far colony. Queen Margaret had planned the visit for months. It was meant to build trust with the people who lived far from the capital. Lily asked to go with her mother. She wanted to see the stars from a ship window and meet new faces. The queen hesitated at first, knowing the journey might carry risks, but Lily's eyes shone with such hope that she agreed. She thought that with the royal guard, nothing could go wrong. For the first few days, the journey was calm. The ship carried them through silent space, and Lily pressed her hands against the glass windows, whispering about how endless the stars looked. Queen Margaret watched her daughter with a soft smile, feeling grateful for the rare, quiet moment they shared. But fate changed without warning. During one of the stops at a trading station, the palace guards grew restless. There was noise and confusion. In the middle of the crowd, Lily's small hand slipped from her mother's. Before the queen could reach her, the girl was gone. The guards searched every hall and every corner of the station, but Lily had vanished. The station officials said they had seen a shadow of men moving quickly, carrying something hidden. But by the time the queen heard this, they were already gone. Panic spread. Messages were sent across the kingdom, calling for help. The queen's advisors urged her to return to the palace and wait for news, but her heart was broken. She could not sleep. She could not eat. Every corner of the palace reminded her of her missing daughter. She sat in the great hall with her crown heavy on her head, listening to reports of failed searches. None of the soldiers, knights, or scouts could find a trace of Lily. Whispers began to fill the court. Some said that the princess might never be found. Others said she had been taken beyond the reach of the kingdom. These words tore at the queen's spirit, but she refused to give up. She promised herself that she would not stop until her daughter returned. Each night, she walked alone in the palace gardens, looking up at the stars, wondering which world her daughter might be on. She thought of the last moment when Lily's hand slipped away, and she felt as if her heart was locked in a cage of grief. No mother should face such a loss. Yet she held on to hope. She whispered to herself that somewhere, someone would have the courage to bring her child home. While the court grew restless and the people whispered of despair, the queen's silent prayer traveled farther than she knew. Somewhere, a man who was not a soldier, not a knight, and not a hero by name, would hear of Lily's disappearance, and in his heart he would feel the call to act. For now, Queen Margaret waited. Her throne felt colder each day. Her crown seemed heavier, but her eyes, though filled with sorrow, still carried a small fire. She would never stop believing her daughter could return, and she promised that if anyone found Lily, she would honor them forever.
Ethan lived on a small colony far from the royal palace. He was an engineer who fixed machines and kept old ships running. People in the colony knew him as quiet and steady. He worked with his hands, spoke little, and never tried to draw attention to himself. He was not a soldier, not a knight, and not the kind of man who stood in shining armor. Yet there was a strength in him that few noticed. He carried it in the way he did his work with care, and in the way he helped others, without asking for anything in return. One evening, Ethan sat at a worn desk in his small room. Broken radio rested in front of him, wires pulled apart. He turned the dials, listening to faint signals from across the stars. It was then he heard the news that would change his life. A message repeated again and again, spreading through every channel. The young Princess Lily had been taken. The queen was calling for her return. Knights, guards, and scouts had tried and failed to find her. Some feared she was lost forever. Ethan sat still, his hand resting on the radio. He thought of the girl he had never met. He imagined her alone and frightened, taken from her mother.
Ow.
Something stirred in his chest. He was no knight, Yet he felt the weight of this loss as if it were his own. He whispered softly to himself that someone had to bring her back. If no one else could, then perhaps he must try. He rose from his chair and walked to the storage room where he kept old maps and charts. Years ago, he had studied routes used by traders and raiders. He remembered patterns, the way certain paths were hidden between the stars. He laid the maps on the table, tracing lines with his finger. His mind worked quickly, linking the reports of where the princess was last seen with the paths raiders were known to use. Slowly, a plan began to take shape. Ethan knew the journey would be dangerous. He had no army to protect him, he had no fine weapons, but he had skill, patience, and a quiet courage that told him not to turn away. He began preparing his small ship. He repaired its engines, packed tools, and stored enough food and water for weeks. His neighbors asked him where he was going, but he gave no answer. He only said that there was something he had to do. As the night before his journey came, Ethan stood outside and looked at the stars. The air was cool, and the colony around him was quiet. He thought of the queen, a mother waiting in sorrow. He thought of the little girl who must be afraid, waiting for someone to find her. In his heart, he knew he could not rest until he tried. He whispered to the sky that he would bring her home. When the dawn came, Ethan's ship lifted slowly from the ground. Its engines groaned, but they held. The ship climbed higher and higher until the colony disappeared behind him. Ahead lay only silence, danger, and the endless stars. But Ethan's mind was clear. He was not chasing glory. He was not seeking reward. He was following the call of his heart, a call stronger than fear. As the days passed, Ethan studied signals from old stations. He searched for faint traces of hidden routes. Each clue he found brought him closer to where he believed Lily was kept. Raiders thought they were safe in secret places, but Ethan's patience and skill cut through their shadows. He pieced together small hints. A broken signal here, a faint trail there. Slowly he closed the distance. Though he traveled alone, he never let doubt rule him. He thought of Lily's small voice calling for her mother. Thought of the queen's heavy crown and her heavy heart. Each thought gave him strength to continue. With every mile, he carried not just tools and maps, but a promise. A promise to a mother he had never met. A promise to a child he had never seen. He would not stop until he found her. Ethan's small ship drifted into a quiet part of space where few people dared to go. The stars here seemed colder, and the silence felt heavy. He studied his maps again and again until he found the signal he had been chasing. It was faint, hidden under static, but his careful hands adjusted the radio until he was sure. Lily was here, somewhere close. He landed on a rocky world where no trees grew and no rivers flowed. The ground was cracked and dry, and the air was sharp and thin. Far away, he saw the lights of an outpost. The buildings were low and rough, made for hiding rather than living. Ethan knew raiders must be here, and he knew they would not give up their prize willingly. He moved carefully, keeping to the shadows. His boots pressed softly into the dust as he climbed closer to the outpost. He saw guards with weapons standing by the gates. He could not fight them head-on. He was not trained for battle. Instead, he studied the way they walked, and when they turned their eyes. He waited for the right moment, then slipped past without a sound. Inside the outpost, the air smelled of rust and smoke. Ethan kept two narrow paths between the buildings, his heart beating steady. He heard voices, rough and harsh, talking about their prize. They said the queen would never see her daughter again. Ethan's jaw tightened, but he stayed calm. Anger would not help him now. Patience would. He found a small building at the far end of the outpost.
Out.
Its door was locked, but the lock was old. Ethan took out his tools, steady and silent, and worked quickly. The door creaked open, and inside he saw her. Lily sat on a small bench, her dress torn, her face pale, but her eyes still bright. When she looked up and saw him, she froze. "Who are you?" she whispered, her voice shaking. "My name is Ethan," he said softly. "I came to take you home." For a moment she only stared, not sure if she could trust him. But there was something calm in his eyes, something steady that told her he spoke the truth. Slowly she nodded. Ethan moved closer and told her to stay quiet. He gave her his jacket to keep her warm, then led her out of the building. The path back was not easy. Guards passed close, and twice Ethan pulled Lily into the shadows just in time. His hands were firm but gentle on her shoulder, guiding her when she trembled. When they reached the edge of the outpost, a sudden noise made the guards turn. Ethan held his breath, pressing Lily against the wall, his heart pounding. The guards passed without seeing them, and he let out a slow breath. Finally, they reached the place where his ship was hidden. Ethan opened the door and lifted Lily inside. The engines hummed as the ship came to life. But just as they lifted off, the raiders noticed. Shouts echoed, and weapons fired into the sky. The ship shook under the blasts, but Ethan gripped the controls, steady and sure. He pushed the engines harder, rising higher and faster. The outpost grew smaller beneath them, until it was only a shadow on the ground. Inside the ship, Lily sat in silence, her hands gripping the seat. She looked at Ethan with wide eyes. "You really came for me," she said, her voice filled with wonder. Ethan gave her a small nod. "I could not let you stay there," he said. "You belong with your mother." Tears welled in Lily's eyes, but this time they were not from fear. She felt safe for the first time since she had been taken. She leaned against the seat, her body relaxing as the stars passed by outside the window. Ethan kept his eyes forward, guiding the ship away from danger. The journey was far from over, but the hardest step had been taken. Lily was free, and in her heart she knew that this quiet man with no armor and no crown had shown more courage than all the knights she had ever heard of. For the first time since her capture, she whispered to herself with hope, she was going home. The palace was filled with silence when word finally reached Queen Margaret that someone was on the way back with her daughter. Many in the court did not believe it at first. Too many false hopes had come before, and too many promises had been broken. But the queen felt something stir in her heart. She walked to the great balcony and looked out at the stars. She whispered that perhaps the long wait was over. As the hours passed, the royal guards prepared the landing field. Nobles gathered, whispering among themselves, asking who could have done what soldiers and knights had failed to do. None of them expected that the answer would not be a hero in armor, but a quiet man they had never known. Ethan's ship cut through the clouds and landed slowly on the stone platform. The engines gave a tired groan as they powered down. The doors opened, and out stepped Ethan, his clothes plain, his hands marked with the rough work of an engineer. Beside him walked Lily, her small hand holding his jacket. Her face was pale, but her eyes were bright with relief. For a breath of silence, the crowd stared, unsure of what they were seeing. Then Lily let go of Ethan's hand and ran across the field. Her voice rang out clear and strong, echoing against the palace walls. "Mom, he rescued me." The queen's heart broke open with joy. She rushed forward, her crown slipping slightly as she bent down to catch her daughter in her arms. Tears filled her eyes as she held Lily close. No treasure, no throne, no crown had ever meant more than this moment. She kissed her daughter's hair and whispered her name over and over again. Behind them, the crowd broke into gasps and murmurs. They saw now that it was true. The princess had returned, and the one who brought her back was not a knight with shining armor, but a man whose face they did not know. Queen Margaret stood, holding Lily by the hand, and turned to face Ethan. She saw a man who carried no pride, no boast, only steady calm in his eyes. She walked toward him, her daughter still clinging to her side. When she reached him, she bowed her head slightly. A queen, lowering her gaze to a common man. "You brought her back to me," she said, her voice filled with gratitude. "You did what none of my armies could do. For this, I owe you more than words." Ethan shook his head. "I did not come for reward," he said softly. "I came because no child should be lost, and no mother should be left without hope." His words struck the court with silence. Many had spoken of honor and duty, but here was a man who asked for nothing. The queen looked at him and felt a deep respect grow in her heart. She knew that courage was not always loud. Sometimes it was quiet, steady, and unseen until the right moment. That evening, the palace held a feast, though it was not for celebration of power or victory. It was for the safe return of a child and the courage of a man. Lily sat close to her mother, never letting go of her hand. From time to time, she looked at Ethan with a smile, her eyes shining with trust and gratitude. Whispers moved through the great hall. Nobles asked each other how such a man could have succeeded where all others had failed. Some were ashamed, for they had doubted and given up. Others felt hope return to their hearts, for if one man could do this, perhaps there was still strength and goodness left in the world. Queen Margaret raised her cup and spoke to all. This man has reminded us that bravery does not always wear armor, and strength does not always come with a sword. It comes from the heart. Tonight we honor him, and we honor the hope that he has given back to us all. Ethan sat quietly, not used to such words or such attention. He had only wanted to bring Lily home. But as he listened to the Queen's voice, he understood that sometimes an ordinary act could change more than he ever dreamed. And in that moment, though he asked for nothing, he had become a hero in the eyes of a kingdom. The morning after the feast, the palace was still filled with a quiet joy. Servants moved through the halls with lighter steps, and guards stood taller at their posts. The princess had returned, and the kingdom felt whole again. Yet one question remained in every heart. What would happen to Ethan, the man who had brought her home? Ethan himself had no such question. He woke early as he always did and stepped out into the gardens. The air was cool and the flowers carried a gentle scent. He walked among them, his hands behind his back, thinking only of returning to his quiet life. He had done what he came to do. He never sought honor or reward. He only wanted to know the princess was safe. As he stood near a fountain, he heard soft footsteps behind him. It was Lily. Wore a fresh dress now. Her hair brushed neatly, and her face carried color again. She walked straight to Ethan and smiled. "I knew you would still be here," she said. "I wanted to thank you again." Ethan looked at her kindly. "You do not need to thank me, Lily," he said. "You are home now, and that is all that matters." But Lily shook her head. "It does matter. You saved me. When I was afraid, you gave me hope. I will never forget that." Her words were steady, and Ethan could see the strength of her mother in her young eyes. Later that day, Queen Margaret called the court together. Nobles and advisors filled the great hall, waiting to hear her speak. The Queen entered, holding Lily's hand, and beside them walked Ethan. Whispers spread quickly as the three reached the throne. The Queen raised her hand for silence. "My daughter was taken from me, and with her was taken the light of this kingdom. Many searched, and many failed. But one man who was neither knight nor noble brought her back." Ethan did not carry a sword, nor did he lead an army. Carried only courage in his heart. "And with that, he has given me back my child." She turned to Ethan and spoke so all could hear. "For what you have done, no reward could be enough. Yet you must know that you are forever honored here. You will have a place in this palace whenever you wish, and the people will remember your name." Ethan bowed his head. "Your Grace, I am grateful, but I ask for nothing. I only wish to return to my work. I am no hero. I am simply a man who could not turn away." The Queen studied him for a long moment, then smiled. "Perhaps that is what makes you the truest hero of all." The hall filled with quiet respect. No one cheered loudly, for the moment did not call for noise. Instead, the people looked at Ethan with new eyes. They saw not just a man, but a symbol of hope and courage. They saw proof that greatness could rise from the most ordinary of places. Just in the days that followed, life in the palace returned to its rhythm. Lily spent her hours with her mother, holding her hand as if never wanting to let go again. Yet she often spoke of Ethan, telling anyone who would listen about the man who had come for her when all seemed lost. The story spread beyond the palace walls, carried through villages and towns, across fields and rivers, until even the far colonies spoke his name. Ethan returned to his quiet life, just as he wished. He fixed machines, repaired ships, and walked through his colony as before. Yet people now greeted him with warm smiles, their eyes shining with respect. Mothers held their children a little closer when they saw him, as if reminded of the bond between a parent and child. And though Ethan said little, he carried their respect with quiet grace. Queen Margaret often looked to the stars and thought of the night her daughter was taken. She thought of the days of despair and the moment of joy when Lily ran into her arms. She thought of Ethan, the man who asked for nothing and gave everything. And in her heart she knew the kingdom would never forget him. In the years to come, stories of knights and battles would fade, but the story of one ordinary man who brought back a princess would remain. And each time it was told, people remembered that courage is not given by crown or armor. Courage is born in the heart, in the choice to act when no one else will. And because of Ethan, the kingdom believed once more in the strength of the human spirit. Thank you for watching and being part of our community.